See that a lot of these projects are happening on private lands, so I appreciate having one of the landowners out here with us today. Obviously wouldn't be possible without them, and so we built our first project in 2003, and as of today have done about 130 projects. And we talked a little bit about kind of the goals of what's called the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. That's kind of what Catherine was alluding to earlier, when we've basically been tasked with trying to voluntarily reduce nitrogen and phosphorus loss across our state. And Iowa State Department of Ag and Department of Natural Resources have come up with a suite of conservation practices. DNR is focused more on wastewater and more of the municipal side of things, where the Department of Ag is kind of targeted on the non-point source or kind of ag loss. And so Iowa State has put out these kind of three main categories of conservation practices. One being kind of nutrient management, the other being edge of field, and then the last being kind of land use. And what I really think that I think edge of field practices have a lot of opportunity is they are very targeted projects that have the opportunity to treat a lot of upstream drainage without having to necessarily take a lot of land out of production, right? So sure, if we seeded everything back to prairie, that would help with a lot of the nutrient challenges that we struggle with today, but is that realistic? No. So that's why I think these edge of field practices have a lot of opportunity that are uptaking the nutrients, and it does do some of that does occur, but the majority of the denitrification that happens is from the microbes that live in the soil. And so the best opportunity to provide as much surface area, so basically the amount of area that the water has contact with directly with the soil, is to have the water very shallow, right? So behind us here you'll see the sheet pile structure, and that's going to be where the deepest area within the wetland is. But when hopefully this map helps a little bit. You can kind of see that blue line. It shows that the wetland pool extends way back into this field. And so the further you get back, it's going to be very, very shallow. But at the deepest spot, it's going to be about 9.5 feet. But the average depth of the entire project area is only about 2.5. And one of the program requirements, in addition to that 0.5% to 2% pool size, is that 75% of the pool has to be 3 feet deep or less. Landowners are compensated for the land that goes into these easements. It uses the FSA soil rental rates, Iowa State's land value surveys, and then ISU's cash rent surveys. And there are two programs that landowners have the ability to sign up with. There's the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, the CREP one I mentioned earlier. That involves a 15-year CRP contract, and then landowners are compensated with a one-time easement payment up front to kind of make up the difference, because after that 15 years, it's not eligible for re-enrollment. So it's kind of a nice way to spread funding out over time. So to have a one-time payment up front and then 15 years after that. Then also there's what's called the Water Quality Initiative Program. That is a state-only program where landowners are compensated using similar methodology to come up with the land values, but they're paid a one-time easement payment up front. And then basically then it's enrolled into that easement moving forward, and so we try to use the Iowa State Land Value Survey to come up with that. This area with this sheet pile weir that basically acts as an impoundment to establish our normal pool elevation and kind of create the wetland pool that's shown on that map that I showed. But as Pat mentioned, there's a water control structure that allows the water to continuously drain, so that basically we have the ability within there's gates that you can pull up to draw down the wetland pool in case there's ever any maintenance needed or anything like that. One of the other cool features, we won't walk all the way up there, but some people worry that, well, isn't this just going to silt in, right? Like that's historically a challenge with ponds and things like that. And one of the other design characteristics design characteristics that we've incorporated into these projects are what they call sedimentation forebays, which are basically deeper areas that allow for sediment to settle out before we get into our normal pool area. One of the other things that I think this project was probably just a hair bit before we started incorporating what are called submerged berms into the projects to basically promote their shallow berms within the pool that force the water to kind of serpentine through the system. So you know, it's a science, right? Like, you're continuing to grow, continuing to adapt and evolve the projects. We're also starting to work on other different types of wetlands in different parts of the landscape. We consider this what's called a breakpoint wetland. And so, as I mentioned, we're impounding a concentrated flow of drainage. One of the things that I will just be open and honest with that has been a challenge in recent years, we're responsible for working on behalf of the landowner on all of the permitting that's associated with these projects. And so one of the things that's been a little bit challenging is anytime you put they consider it a dam across a intermittent stream or a perennial stream, we have to get a permit through the Army Corps of Engineers.